We follow a team of researchers looking into the mysteries of a recently discovered early colony of settlers from generations past. The colony was separated from the rest of the inhabited world through a cataclysm known as the Severing. Humanity long ago gave up on ever finding them and moved on with their lives. It is revealed rather early in the story that the team of researchers are blood descendants of the lost settlers. The settlers had been assembled according to ideal genetic proportions of settler groups from human history. And now here's a note for y'all. Because when we talk about ideal genetic proportions, a lot of people will go, ugh, are you talking about eugenics? No. So this is about natural evolutionary diversity, including neurodiversity, which Lynn Kelly discusses in her book that is not available in the US yet, but it is available in Australia. And it's called The Knowledge Gene. And she explores topics like how and why have divergent traits like autism survived? And Kelly's research suggests that the successful groups of humans, like 100 people or more, that survived to be our ancestors needed autistic people and other neurodivergent people playing key minority roles. They were especially adept at some things that the groups needed. So I don't have the book yet. It's not available in the US yet, but there's a fascinating interview of Lynn Kelly talking about this book on Anthony Bativier's podcast, which seems to be my sole source for everything. So back to the story arc. So sometime after it became possible to gain entrance to the settlers' colony, which was found to be empty, but in curiously great shape, it was accidentally discovered, or was it, spoilers, that a blood descendant of one of the settlers had been the one who had figured out where the colony was. A few other clues about getting into it were discovered by other descendants. Many of these current discoverers had no idea of their ancestry. Jenna, the character introduced in my 100-word story, is a descendant of someone she calls Grandpa. That person is far older than that. Grandpa is from the lost colony. Somehow Jenna and Grandpa have a dialogue going. They are riffing with each other. It turns out that their blood tie is what my husband and I call clown blood. They share an irreverent sense of humor like you might find in one of Shakespeare's Jesters or the Marx Brothers. So how are Jenna and Grandpa communicating? Well, Jenna doesn't know, but she suspects that Grandpa knows because he seems several steps ahead of her. Our researchers have advanced technology hinted at in the italicized words and those that I read out in whispered voice, like NA or I. There are mentions, as in the second paragraph, the link took her down to the vault. So the researchers have a greatly advanced form of a neuronal human link technology, such as Elon Musk's Neuralink, which by their time would be viewed as archaic. Long before Jenna's time, two things happened. The links enabled the humans equipped with these mods to communicate directly with each other without writing or speaking or needing to be near each other. The ability to manufacture a custom-made link integrated into a human body was encoded into human DNA. The linked have been communicating through this medium for so long they take it utterly for granted and do not feel the need to understand it. Linked society have embedded social norms into the links because, after all, the link is a receiver and a transmitter. A base operating norm is that linked understanding is perfect understanding. Any other understanding is imperfect. When Jenna receives an NA, it is a corrective. The linked do not read or write language. It hasn't been necessary for ages. Their links tell them what they need to know, navigate for them, entertain them. They do, however, learn as children to speak. This trains them and their links to operate together, to hold inner dialogue, and establish distinct, recognizable characteristics when they communicate with others. There are occasional established events in adolescence and adulthood where linked people are expected to speak. Most people in Jenna's generation roll their eyes at these events as an anachronistic waste of time. Jenna's people do not refer to themselves as the linked. They will learn from their ancestor Zettelkastens that they use that name to refer to the people they came from, but not themselves. The ancestors' early generation links were only designed to work with a single human for that human's lifetime. We meet Jenna in her first in-person visit to a large hall called Farewell. That name did not survive my 100-word cut. Place is called Farewell. And they call the place Farewell because the name is carved over the door. They know this now because of the Rosetta floor. They learned the ancestors' written language from the Rosetta floor. Prior to this scene, Jenna has solved the mystery of the curious arrangement of stones in that floor. It's a series of QR codes-ish that transmit a lot of information. Grandpa's idea of a joke was to begin the message with, "To whom it may concern." Using a hall named Farewell to say hello is another joke. The early generation links that existed in the ancestors' day could read these codes, but that was several bygone eras ago. Jenna is pretty chuffed to have solved this puzzle using a simulator of the ancient link. Her success earned her a try at cracking the contents of the vault. Farewell is also a Lukasa. This is another nod to Lynn Kelly, this time of her book, The Memory Code and Memory Craft. In the Farewell Lukasa, the walls and the support columns are studded with objects that are placed deliberately, and they're polished by the oil of countless palms. At first, nobody knows that it is a Lukasa, what a Lukasa even is, or what memories are encoded in it. Odd reverberations happen in this place, depending on the path that you take through it. Another mystery. The first time Jenna touches through the sequence of beads to open the first drawer in the cabinet, she fails and receives a haptic response in the older protocol of the ancestors' links. She also experiences a secret smile in her throat with no NA. She and Grandpa have negotiated a private channel the link isn't onto. That tug at her throat tells her why she failed. She hadn't spoken the words the first time. So where is this going? Here's the big shift in scale for a whole arc that is starting to emerge. Now, should I stop there and we'll discuss from that point, and then maybe we'll go into everything else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because that for now we are up to the present of your story.
Yes.
And our stories.
Yeah.
Because it's the first exploration of the physical space that the separated occupied.
Yes.
And then the rest of your background is where you envision the story going.
Exactly. And it's like even the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, and I think some of the hints that I have told here are the sort of hints that you might see on the back of the book. You know, they haven't spoiled anything.
Yeah.
So this really was a mind dump yesterday. All sorts of, well, it was over the weekend. It was like, okay, we're going to do this. I better write
And
mine.
then
Anyway, this whole story is apparently my concoction, and I literally didn't even know what I was doing. And it all just poured out. And I have to say, we talked in episode 3 about, our relationships with our Zettelkastens and stuff. And I talked about the skein at the top of my head. Everything is in this. I looked at, I created a list of all of the books that I have in mind referencing for this, and it covers every single 1 through 5 of the categories. Unintentionally,
Awesome.
it's just they're all there.
Uh-huh.
So now that's what happened to me. Does it translate? Where are the holes? Where are some things in this whole like world building foray that you go, wait a minute?
Well, it's fascinating. I'm really glad that I wrote my piece before I read your world building, because otherwise I would have felt that I needed to be directly in that world. But I'm glad I did not read that first, because the world that I created is what they have to discover and interpret.
Yes.
And by definition, it needs to be different from their world. And so it does present a very, very different picture of this highly techno world of whatever their Zettelkasten is like is the vault. I mean, it's this giant thing. And then you contrast it with a little shoebox thing of a little child in mind. So obviously, there's got to be something that's very key to something in the future that's contained in that little box.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about the secret box?
Let me interrupt you, because when I was thinking about the possibilities, Kathleen, when I read your piece, I found myself thinking, what if the child Polly's box is something that an adult brought with them and saved? The child was never actually there.
Oh.
It's a keepsake, not necessarily an artifact. Just put that in your back pocket.
Uh-huh. Huh.
I don't know.
Another thing it could be is that as the researchers are working through all of this, there's a kid. And she's hearing the conversations and she's imitating.
Oh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I was kind of picturing with it that because it's a kid box, and this is a very sophisticated society, it's going to be like, well, at least there's one we don't need to try to figure out.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. But later, there's a twist.
Archive it. I mean, it came with the community, but so archive it, but a piece of ribbon.
Right.
Oh,
That's right.
where was that piece of ribbon?
Yeah, yeah.
that wad of glue was the whole world.
Or wait until they find in Victoria's a paper with a torn segment of some key words, and they're missing because that piece of something, an object has been torn from the page and you can't read the most important words.
I would never do that.
Okay. What would you do, Victoria? Yours is crazy.
No, I was just thinking I'd rip the whole chapter out of the book. There'd be no page torn.
We know this to be true.
Yeah. Well, I think like the overall thread, it works because already thematically, we're dealing with the analog versus digital question.
Yes.
With, the intuitive versus the technological. I mean, we're already grappling with some thematic elements that totally work.
So
I'm just
speaking
looking
of
at my
thematic elements, since I didn't get a chance to write a little story for the first challenge, I figured I would just go ahead and pull a card out of my Zettelkasten at random to see if it would spark something that would go with this, and boy, did it. This is an really old card.
Wait, hold on, I got chills.
This is before I even had a Zettelkasten when I wrote this card, but it was from a book called Hydriotaphia or Tophia, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, urn burial, which was published in where did I write that? 1658, and it was all about burial customs.
Burial.
But yeah, and the quote that I had written down from it was, "But the iniquity of oblivion blindly scattereth her poppy, and deals with the memory of men without distinction to merit of perpetuity." So, I mean, it's about, you know, what's important to us now is not what's gets saved. It's not what shows up in future generations. And we have no control over what future generations are going to discover or remember about us.